Redevelopment Agency. Please call the roll.
1 second. Agency Member Atkin. Here. Agency Member Brinkman.
Present.
Agency Member Bukowski.
Here.
Vice Chair West. Here. And Chair Davis.
Here, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any public comments on items not on the agenda?
Yes, Sharon Wilshire. Just a couple of things. One, just in the last week or so, we've installed new bus shelter art, and this is a 3-year program, and I think we're in our 3rd year right now. So Dean Hunsaker, who works here in Emeryville, was one of the 9 artists who was selected, so you'll see new work around town. And also, I just wanted to mention that the call to entry is out for the 25th annual. And the deadline for sending, if you're an artist who lives or works in Emeryville who's interested in having their work reviewed, Friday, June the 17th is the deadline for the application.
It's really been 25 years?
No,
Hard
it
to
hasn't
believe. It just seems like
You're only
yesterday.
10 years old when you
been.
started
No, it
that.
hasn't been. No.
Yeah. Started
Any
that in
other
grade
public
school,
comment? There being none, I would entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
I'd just like to poll E just for a quick question.
E? Do you are making a motion for the rest of the
I would
consent
make the
calendar?
motion. Mhm.
Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection. Okay, item E.
Do we have any other realtors that approached the city about this contract for the Emeryville housing programs?
Well, we haven't put it out for a solicitation. We've been in a contract with Janet Anderson for, I don't know, some 20 years now.
Yeah, I know, but a year or two ago, some people had expressed some interest, and I was just wondering if anybody expressed any interest.
No, there haven't been any.
Okay, thank you. I'd move E.
Second, without objection.
Call the roll on this one, please.
Oh, call the roll.
Sorry. Agency Member Atkin.
Here. Yes.
Agency Member Brinkman.
Aye.
Agency Member Brinkman.
Aye.
Agency Member Bukowski.
No.
Vice Chair West.
Aye.
And Chair Davis.
Aye. There are no public hearings or policy items. Move right into administrative items. Amendments to add the Community Development Commission of Emeryville. This is in conjunction with the City Council item 8A. At this point, I'll open the City Council meeting too.
Oh, I'm going to go up there. To advance? Yes. Thanks. Council members, this item is before you tonight as a result of the proposed legislation at the state level that could potentially eliminate redevelopment agencies. That's being considered in the next couple of weeks. The proposal has been out since January. We don't know whether or not it will pass. There is some growing support for an alternative to that legislation, which we're hoping will overcome the desire to try and eliminate redevelopment agencies. But nonetheless, we need to plan for the possibility that agencies could be terminated at the end of this month. So one of the things, what's before you tonight is the idea of establishing a community development commission that would take over the functions of a redevelopment agency in the event that they're terminated. In addition, creating a community development commission would also protect two existing joint powers authority arrangements that we have. One is MESA, which is the employer of our non-safety personnel, and the second is our public finance agency, which sells all of our bonds for capital improvements. So just some background to remind everyone that MESA was created in order to employ non-sworn staff several years ago. So all the actions that you take in order to add employees or change the nature of positions are all approved by MESA. That's a separate agenda, a separate entity. Similarly, with the Public Finance Authority, that is also a separate entity. Both the council is the board of directors for both of those entities. Joint Powers Authority requires at least 2 members to be in existence. And what we're concerned about is that if redevelopment agencies are eliminated at the end of this month, that we would lose one of the 2 members that make up each of those joint powers authorities. And as a result of that, both of those joint powers authorities would automatically dissolve. If that were the case, the implication for MESA is that all of our employees, non-safety employees, would then be without an employer. It would be necessary to bring those employees back under the city in order to be employed, which has major cost consequences to both the city organization and the employees, which I'll touch upon in more detail later. The powers of a community development commission are the same as a redevelopment agency. So all of the things that you have been able to do as the board of directors of the agency, you would continue to be able to do as a community development commission. In addition, the Community Development Commission is allowed by state redevelopment law to assume the powers and responsibilities of a housing authority, although we are not recommending that that become part of the scope of what our Community Development Commission does. But that was one of the reasons why it was established by state law as a separate entity. If we create the commission tonight, then we will then be adding, and there's several actions that you'll take that I'll touch on, we'll be adding then the Community Development Commission to each of the joint powers authorities, MESA for the labor, and then also for the Public Finance Authority. And that is the recommendation that we're making. There's several resolutions that I'll touch on in a minute. One is that we first add the Community Development Commission to each of the joint powers authorities. The 2 existing members of those, the agency and the council, have to approve the addition of the Community Development Commission. And then secondly, once the commission is established, or once it's added, then there are 2 ordinances that have to be adopted in order to actually establish the commission. We're recommending that the commission be established both by urgency ordinance and by regular ordinance. And the reason for that is the time frame for establishing the commission by regular ordinance would take us beyond the end of June 30th. And we need to get this into place before July 1st, which is the potential effective date of the legislation that would kill redevelopment. So that's the purpose of the urgency ordinance, is to allow that to occur. That's essentially what I just went through there. So the fiscal impact, if we do not do this, if we don't create the Community Development Commission and the state kills off redevelopment agencies and the MESA Joint Powers Authority dissolves, then we would need to take the non-safety employees, make them employees of the city once again, and that would then trigger our requirement that we re-enter the Social Security system, which we're currently not in. And that means approximately a $500,000 annual cost to the city's general fund for Social Security contributions, which we do not have in our budget, and would have to come out of reserves in order to accomplish that. And then secondly, employees would be required to contribute 6% of their gross salaries to Social Security. And this would be in addition to the employee contributions that we're asking be made in order for employees to cover their cost of the CalPERS retirement plan costs. So there's a potential there of the combined two to be about 13% reduction in pay to the employees. So that's not something that we want to see happen or recommend that you allow to happen. So as a result of that reality, we're recommending that you undertake several things jointly here. The first couple of resolutions are to bring the Community Development Commission into both of the joint powers authorities. You need to do that before you create the Community Development Commission, and then the second set of resolutions actually creates the commission. So I have here from legal counsel Tricia Ortiz, who can assist with any legal questions that you have regarding the Joint Powers Authorities or the Community Development Commission or the order of what we're doing. I also want to let you know that after tonight, if you decide to go forward, we would need to come back at the June 21st meeting with the second reading of the ordinance that establishes the Community Development Commission. And then there is also a compensation for the commissioners, and the amount of that compensation you need to set. You currently receive compensation on a monthly basis as a redevelopment agency board. You would need to set comparable compensation as a commissioner. And that's the presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Jennifer.
My question is, what if redevelopment agencies don't go away? What happens if we were to establish the CDCE? Would they go work concurrently, or?
So the commission would continue to be the entity that administers the redevelopment function. So it would take the place of the agency, although the agency would still be in existence.
So they would not have the same agendas and both execute decisions and functions. The CDCE would take over the responsibilities, and what would be left of the redevelopment agency?
It would essentially be dormant. So the Community Development Commission would administer all of the redevelopment agency functions. So instead of having a redevelopment agenda as you do tonight, it would be a Community Development Commission agenda.
And if the redevelopment agencies are terminated by the governor and the state legislature, can you explain what happens to the powers then of the CDCE?
So then all of the redevelopment powers that would be eliminated by the death legislation would be taken away from the CDC. And the CDC would have whatever residual powers are left in state law, but it would no longer be able to administer the redevelopment function.
Can you articulate what some of those might be, if according to the...
So your ability to acquire property, sell bonds, undertake capital projects, all of those activities that are currently undertaken by your redevelopment agency would disappear from the CDC.
And what would be left?
So what would be left is economic development activities that we fund from sources of funds other than tax increments, so say from our federal funds, community development block grant funds. Similarly with housing, any housing activities that we undertake with other sources of funds, grants.
We'd still have the debt service on the prior bonds.
Correct, yes, and that
So that's an ongoing activity.
that doesn't go away. So the state death legislation, recognizes that debt service has to be paid off. So it would continue to oversee that as well.
Any other questions from Councilmember Bukowski?
Yeah, I mean, I had a fundamental problem when we created MESA, because it seems like we're just trying to circumvent the Social Security law. And I don't know, I guess this would be a question for the legal counsel. I mean, is that the right thing to do? I mean, is it okay to just establish another agency so that we circumvent paying Social Security?
Well, we've already gone through that. The council has taken the action to establish MESA. We took a ratifying action to court, and the court approved the action that the council took. So we're well beyond that decision.
No, I understand we're beyond the decision, but I mean, I guess that's the right thing to do. I mean, I don't know, it seems like we're circumventing the law here, but, all right.
Oh,
Any other questions?
Well, I was just going on what Ken says. We don't have the opportunity of just being Social Security employees. I mean, you being Social Security employees. You have to be CalPERS employees. So it's not an either or, is what I'm saying.
Well, it can be both.
Or it's a both. That's what I'm saying.
It can be both. Yeah.
Can be both.
It's not now.
Yeah.
It just seems that everybody else is required to pay Social Security, and if we're supposed to do that, then we're not doing that. And we're taking an action that circumvents doing that.
But you be paying both, Ken. That's the problem.
I understand the problem, the financial problem, it's just,
When I was employed as a teacher in a public district, I did not pay into Social Security. I paid into the California Teachers Retirement System.
Yeah.
okay.
So I don't know how others circumvent it, or if it's anything wrong with it. I don't believe it is. That just certain organizations either pay into Social Security or they don't, and I guess some do both, which surprises me.
But you have to create a separate, I mean, like, everybody's got to work for a separate agency just for the purpose of avoiding paying Social Security.
I would
It's-
question how many different cities pay into both. Do you know? of
I
any
don't know.
Yeah, I would.
We can find that out, but
Dolores
I don't
wants
know
to
off the
talk
top
to
of my
that.
head.
I can't give you an exact number, but I will say, based on the information I read in the reports when MESA was created in the late 1990s, one of the main issues is that most public agencies in the Bay Area, I would probably say in the high 80%, are not in Social Security. So when we're competing for qualified, experienced staff, they're not going to leave an agency where they're not in Social Security and come here and immediately take a 7% pay hit. So the creation of MESA provided that opportunity. In addition, generally speaking, when you're paying into Social Security, those funds go in. When people leave the service, the city gets no credit for that fund. We were paying Social Security for temporary seasonal staff who generally don't work the number of required quarters 40 to even get the benefit. So a lot of those dollars that the city was paying into that system were lost dollars because employees either weren't realizing the benefit of being in the Social Security system because they were seasonal, or because they never realized the true benefits, because as a PERS concurrent, your PERS is offset. They reduce your PERS benefit by your Social Security benefit. So I think the rationale was there was savings to the city. It provided an opportunity for us to be more marketable to trained lateral transfer of skills, and it saved both the city and the employees money, and still provided a great defined benefit in the form of the CalPERS plan. And employees did get an incentive for doing that. They enhanced the retirement plan here to a one-year final comp situation, so that was more advantageous, and they got some other benefits in exchange for
As
it.
long as the fund is funded, and we have no unfunded liabilities, which we wouldn't have in Social Security.
We wouldn't have unfunded liability with Social
No,
Security.
you don't have unfunded liabilities with Social Security.
Exactly.
So I meant that's really the big difference. So with PERS, you have unfunded liabilities, which we have $3.5 million. With Social Security, you have no unfunded liabilities because you pay it at every paycheck. So that's really the big difference in my view between the two.
I guess my question is if I guess the IRS knows about it, so it's okay for some agencies to say, well, we just don't want to pay Social Security, so we'll just create another agency, and I guess IRS thinks that's okay?
Well, When it was created, it did go through the entire process through the IRS. It was evaluated, a new entity was created. And again, keeping in mind, the majority of public agencies were not in Social Security, which was one of the incentives for us going that way.
All right.
Councilmember Atkin.
The payroll deductions still include Medicare tax, right?
Correct.
So similar to getting a Social Security retirement check, isn't there 40 quarters of Medicare taxes before someone can be eligible for Medicare when they age into it?
I don't believe the 40 quarters is required for the Medicare coverage. I think you just have to pay into the system. I may be wrong on that, but I don't think it requires 40
But you have
quarters.
to pay into it for some amount of time, I think.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I think you have to pay into it for some amount of time.
Well, our employees have been paying into it since '98, when Mesa was created.
Any other comments?
Yeah, would it be possible before our next meeting to come back with an explanation of how the other 80% of public agencies, how they have functioned to not pay into Social Security, just so that we have a comparison of the methods or the...
Well, I don't think they created new entities. There was a point in time where public agencies, because of federal law, were not required to participate in Social Security. The federal government doesn't participate in Social Security. The Postal Service does not participate
right.
in Social Security. So there was a point in time where public agencies, because they were governmental agencies, did not. And so...
Any other comments?
But Emeryville didn't do that at that time, is what you're saying?
Well, it was like in the, what I
70s.
understand, in the 70s. It's been some time ago.
So maybe we
and
missed
so
that
then
opportunity
after
and-
that,
instead.
yeah.
I'd like to make a few comments. And Mr. O'Keefe, I really appreciate all the work that you've put into this, and I understand that it's a response to the actions by the governor and the state. But I have the uneasy feeling that it's a panic reaction to a very bad situation. And I think it's moving in the wrong direction. I think we have an opportunity here, rather than make a quick decision to establish yet another bureaucratic layer in this city, to step back and think about this, and think about how we would operate if indeed the agency goes away. This particular let's see, what the Community Development Commission really will essentially not function as a redevelopment agency. So here we are creating an entity. It looks like a shell game to me. We're a 1 square mile city. We should be looking in the direction of our core responsibilities of making this government as clearly able to be perceived as how it operates as possible. And adding yet another entity here does not seem to me to be the direction that we want to go in. This is a time to simplify and not further complicate the structure. The need, in my mind, is not justified to create this entity. I will be voting against all of these because I think we have got to get back to the root of operating a city as lean and mean as possible. Not mean, but lean. Councilmember Atkin.
Since debt service will be our burden anyway, even if redevelopment is eliminated, don't we need a legal entity separate from the city of Emeryville to service the debt obligations of the redevelopment bonds?
No, that's not how I understand what's going to happen, even
That's
if...
a question. Is there a yes or no?
Yeah, so the way the legislation is written now is that I think the city actually ends up becoming the successor agency that administers the debt service for the bonds.
That's
And-
what
and-
I understand,
And
Patrick.
does the city become the successor agency for any remnant housing activities as well?
Well, that we,
You don't know.
yeah, that I'm not sure about. I mean, that I know that the CDC could do. I'm not sure if the city would have the ability to do that.
Well, the city of Berkeley operates a housing program. It's not through their redevelopment.
Yeah, I would have to look
Housing
into their
authority.
situation. I think it's a housing authority that
Right.
does that.
Different.
Councilmember Bukowski.
So what is the problem if we don't do this tonight? What happens if we wait? Let's see what they do with redevelopment. Why don't we just wait?
If they pass the death legislation and it becomes effective on July 1st, you will then have a hit of $500,000 a year to the general fund in order to pay for Social Security, and the employees will have an additional 6% deducted from their paychecks for Social Security.
That's a year, so if we did it next week, it wouldn't be a whole year, it would be 2 weeks or 1
July
week.
1st. If the death legislation becomes effective on July 1st, you will have that immediate hit to the general fund, for
Well,
which you
immediately-
don't have revenues.
We'd have to pay $500,000 right out, is what you're saying.
No, it would be during the course of the year. It's paid on as each payroll is
So if we took
paid.
action next week or the next meeting, then you might have a small amount of money to pay, but you wouldn't have, you just wouldn't, it
So,
wouldn't be 500,000.
so after, what you're saying, Pat, so after July 1st, we'd have no opportunity to put in place the CDCE?
Right,
You would have
because
Right.
you have to have two entities in the Mesa JPA
Okay,
in order for it to be an effective JPA. You have to have both of those entities, the city and the redevelopment agency, agree to accept the CDC into the JPA.
okay.
So if on July 1st the redevelopment agency is terminated and you haven't created the CDC, your JPA disappears and you won't be able to add the CDC to it. It's gone.
And if the redevelopment agency doesn't disappear in July 1st, then what would happen then?
You'd have three entities in the
Of
JPA.
which we could disband one of them after July 1st?
I suppose you could do that. I don't know if you would need to, but you could.
Well, if the redevelopment agency disappears, what is the cost of operating the redevelopment agency? Far more than $500,000.
I'm sorry. I don't follow that question.
If the redevelopment agency disappears, you will lose a number of positions in the city.
Yeah, that would be on top of the $500,000.
Wouldn't be on top of it, it would be
No,
eliminated.
it's on top of it.
Yeah, on top of it.
I think that
There's
Let-
money
let-
that's just to answer that question. There are monies that the redevelopment agency pays to the general fund for positions that support the redevelopment agency. So, for example, Public Works implements the construction of redevelopment agency projects. There's a portion of the redevelopment agency revenues that go towards paying those salaries to compensate for that time. That goes away. So we'll have a deficit in the general fund by that amount. And in addition to that, we'll have the Social Security hit.
Let me ask another question. Couldn't we have a special meeting if this legislation passes and do this rather than
Well-
a knee-jerk reaction?
Well, I don't know when the legislation is going to pass.
But it doesn't
Yeah,
take effect this instant.
Councilmember Atkins.
I want to make a comment, which is I think staff with outside counsel has looked at kind of a creative way of dealing with the crisis that the state has foisted upon local government. And I do think that there are some things that we want to do long-term, medium-term, and short-term in this city that are very much tied up with capital improvements and the Public Works Department. And I think creating a legal entity like this at least gives us as a city an opportunity to move forward on our short, medium, and long-term goals. At least there's the framework to be able to move ahead on those that we would lose if we didn't have both either redevelopment or a community development commission. So aside from getting into the impacts on the employees, which we have a number of employees here who might have a very strong opinion about what we're talking about, and we're being rather cavalier about all of this. But more to the point in terms of the people of Emeryville, it seems to me we want to maintain as much as we can even the potential to be able to continue with some of the capital needs that the community has identified for a long period of time. So I, for one, will differ from what the mayor's indicated she's going to vote. I think this is a very creative solution to the crisis that the state has foisted on us. Secondly, my second piece to this is 1998, when Mesa was created, is a different day and a different period than we are in now. And perhaps, I know we're in labor negotiations, but maybe it would be helpful for the HR department to survey the staff to see if they're I mean, we've heard one comment, at least during negotiations, when there was a show of strength here one night, about not paying into Social Security and wanting to preserve pensions because they don't have Social Security as an option. And maybe it would behoove us to go back to the employees and ask them how they feel about not being in Social Security, and if they would want the additional 6% taken out of their payroll, deducted to pay into it. So this is, I see that as kind of a related but separate issue. I think ultimately the Community Development Commission is what the name says, and I think we want to maintain some capability legally to do more community development. So I will be supporting these, and would ask that HR interview the employees.
If I could respond, Councilmember Atkin, creating a community development commission is not going to create the money to create capital projects. The tax money that flows in here would flow into the general fund and could be allocated to capital projects and administrated by the Public Works Department. So just setting up a community development commission does not really give you any tools or any money to make capital projects. And getting back to the Social Security issue, I have serious concerns about PERS. I think the corruption that has been demonstrated with all the shenanigans that went on with PERS, I know they're trying to correct it, but I really have very little faith in PERS. So I just do not see that the development of this Community Development Commission is going to aid the people in this city, our taxpayers, our constituents, in any way, shape, or form. I think that the private sector is getting very weary of, quote, creative solutions that benefit the public sector. They're looking to see service in their community. They're looking to see capital projects, and that can be done by the city of Emeryville. But let's move along. Anybody else want to?
Jennifer,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate actually all the comments that I've heard from my colleagues tonight, and I think that we do need to look seriously at short-term, that's what we're looking at tonight, but midterm and long-term plans. And if redevelopment goes away, I think we have some serious and hard looking to do. I know since I've been on the council, we haven't had, I think it's called an advance. I think it's actually 2 years, yesterday or something was the last opportunity the council had to look at some long-term issues. And I would ask the staff and ask the council to support doing such an event or an activity. But I think in the financial interests of the city and the taxpayers, and I think most importantly the employees, it makes sense to put this in place as well, and to preserve basically their hard worked income. And if redevelopment goes away, it's not business as usual in this town. We need to figure out some other things. I'm all with a lean Emeryville, but I don't think we should have it happen at the hands of the state. I think we need to be deliberate and kind of proactive about how we do that. But it will be an opportunity for us to look at things new. So I'll also support these shenanigans, I guess, to make sure that we have in place something that's viable for the city and for our budget, for our taxpayers, for our employees.
Councilmember Bukowski.
I'm not sure I got a clear answer on the question of whether we could have a special meeting to do this.
You could have a special meeting, but we need to have it approved before the end of the month.
Well, I mean, I don't want to create it if it's not necessary. We're not even sure if this is necessary, so this is a whole lot of work that may not be necessary. That's you know, so if we could wait till the last minute and do it, I would rather do that and then save all this creation of all this stuff here.
Does the attorney have anything to say?
Yeah, Tricia,
Since-
can you tell us how
Allowed
late
to
we can
disband
delay?
something like this if it was not necessary in the future?
City Council members, thank you. My name is Tricia Ortiz, and I'm the special counsel that worked with the city in developing this. One of the things that I think is important to point out is the governor's legislation, as it's currently drafted, would become effective immediately upon passage. And one of the provisions in there is the day it becomes effective, the redevelopment agency cannot amend any agreements. So even if it goes into effect tomorrow, then they would not have the power to amend any of these agreements to take action, so.
Okay.
Councilmember Vice Mayor West.
Is it possible that the state could put in place this legislation and say that as of March 1, redevelopment agencies could not amend any agreements, something retroactive?
So we've looked at that. I don't know. There's impairment of contract issues and all sorts of things, but the way it stands, the two proposals that are out there now say that as of the date that they get the votes and the governor signs, it becomes effective, and redevelopment agencies are without power to amend any of their agreements.
So basically what we're doing right now is we're protecting our employees from having to pay Social Security. That's the first step. I meant the broad brush. Secondly, if redevelopment goes away, then we're going to have a lot of other things that we're going to have to do when it comes to funding streams and sources, and coming back and looking at our budgets as far as how we need to adjust without those dollars coming in from redevelopment.
Yeah, so I'm not a labor and employment attorney, so I can't comment on the Social Security issue. But what will happen is, under the governor's current proposal, the city would become the agency that is in charge of winding up the redevelopment agency's affairs and would service the debt and be responsible for all the assets and liabilities of the redevelopment agency.
So where does the Community Development Commission fit in if the city is supposed to take that responsibility?
Right, so the city would take over all the responsibilities of the redevelopment agency. However, the Community Development Commission would still remain in existence for all of the other functions that are prescribed by the ordinance that creates it. And there's just some very general powers with regard to community development functions, and there's general powers to enter into contracts and things like that. So what would happen is the Community Development Commission would still be in existence, allowing it to be part of the Joint Powers Authority, but it would not have any powers with respect to redevelopment.
But employment.
Is there any public comment on this issue? Mr. Carpio.
At one time, I was involved in an anti-poverty program, and there was a lots of study about the purpose of Social Security and CalPER. So, and there was SPR, which is a different organization. So what did happen is that people who did pay for Social Security at the end of their career, they found out they were still on a string. They wouldn't get very much money from the Social Security, not an equivalent of if they would have invested in a private enterprise, in a private funding or in a bank or something. That's why they made the IRA. But then at that time, the public employee, which basically lower paid than in the private sector, ended up having even a lower reward from the Social Security. So they created CalPER, and the school system or whatever provided their share on the payment of CalPER, just like you said, as a teacher, I was teacher too. So, but then what happened is that at the end, when you come to your retirement there, you get your Social Security and your CalPER, and you find out you get really very little. You get cheated unless you work many years at the top scale. So, I mean, I don't want to say I've been cheated. It's not that, but then what I found out is that people who never paid anything during their whole life, whatever they fly kite or play or gamble everything, when they turn 65 or when they are needed, the Social Security pays them, thanks to Eleanor Roosevelt when she initiated that.
That's right.
So here we are. If we do not pay, if we do not contribute to Social Security, we kind of cheat ourselves. I mean, you cheat yourself. Me, I'm getting it, so it's over. But for you who haven't got anything, you have to be real careful. And I would say that not only contribute to CalPER, but also contribute to Social Security. Otherwise, you will end up having a fight with Social Security. And the other thing also, Social Security, they want to pay directly in your bank account. And the reason they want to pay to the bank account is by any warning. No signal, nothing. They can empty your bank account and you have nothing to say. You have to call to them and beg them, what happened? And they say, well, we'll give you a hearing. And the hearing could be a piece of advertising or something like that. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? I'll entertain a motion.
I move the redevelopment agency resos.
I'll second that.
Let's take them one at a time. This is authorizing the execution of the First Amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement, creating the management of the Emeryville Services Authority. Call the roll, please.
I want to make sure that I have the right one. So this is A1, correct?
Correct.
West. Excuse me. Agency Member Atkin.
Aye.
Agency Member Brinkman.
Aye.
Agency Member Bukowski.
Aye.
Vice Chair West.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
No.
Move to A2.
That's the execution of the First Amendment to the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement for the Emeryville Public Financing Authority. Call the roll, please.
I'll second that.
That's Atkin and West.
Yes.
Agency Member Atkin.
Aye.
Agency Member Brinkman.
Aye.
Agency Member Bukowski.
Aye.
Vice Chair West.
Aye.
And Chair Davis.
No.
I move the city council resos under item 8A.
Okay, this is Joint Powers Agreement creating the management of Emeryville. This is a First Amendment to the JPA on Mesa. Call the roll, please.
It's
You have
8A.
8.
I'll
Eight-
second that.
8A.
8A1.
8A1.
Call the roll.
Okay. Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bukowski.
Aye.
Vice Mayor West.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
No.
I move 8A2 of the city council agenda.
I'll second that.
This is the First Amendment for the JPA for the Emeryville Public Financing Authority. Call the roll.
Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bukowski.
Aye.
Vice Mayor West.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
No.
I move city council item 8B 1,
This is the urgency ordinance.
yes, declaring a need for a community development commission.
I'll second that.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bukowski.
Aye.
Vice Mayor West.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
No.
And I'll move 8B2 of the city council agenda, first reading of an ordinance.
Read
Move
by-
to read by title only.
Second.
That's,
Without exception.
and,
Read by title only.
okay.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville declaring the need for a Community Development Commission in the City of Emeryville.
And that's for AB1 or AB2, I'm sorry.
2.
AB2, okay.
I need a motion on the ordinance itself.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bukowski.
Aye.
Vice Mayor West.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
No. Moving on to communication and reports, department head.
I have a report to make.
Other items on the agency, don't you?
We're still on the agency.
Oh, that's right, okay, sorry.
So I'd like to report on 3 letters that are before you. One in support of AB 1250, Alejo, it's addressed to Honorable Louis Alejo, Honorable Lonnie Hancock, and Honorable Nancy Skinner. What AB 1250 is redevelopment reform legislation that is being considered. There's 15 Democratic senators that have signed on to sponsor that legislation, and we are asking that you support sending these letters out as soon as possible. Just as a little background on that, in terms of the timing of the budget, we received a notification today from the California Redevelopment Association that the governor and the legislative leadership wish to finalize the budget this week. The Senate is going to go into session Wednesday, June 8th. They're going to stay through the weekend, and the President, Darrell Steinberg of the Senate, wants to have a budget by June 10th. So the final negotiations on what is going to happen to redevelopment seem to be coming to a head very shortly, and hopefully these letters will help sway the senators and the assembly member in our direction.
Okay, is there any objection to sending those letters out? There being none. Any other department heads? Agency members? I'd just like to commend Karen Hemphill for putting on a wonderful mock council meeting for the Anna Yates third grade. It was, and she had prepared an agenda. It was wonderful. And the issue on the agenda was whether or not there was going to be a dog park. And all the people who were the audience wanted the dog park, and 5 members of the council up there banging their gavel were saying no. It was a perfect. Thank you, Karen. It was very well done.
my
Any
pleasure.
other agency members? Meeting is adjourned. Let's move on to the Emeryville City Council meeting. And are there any public comments? There being none, city managers report.
No report tonight.
Okay, do I hear a motion on the consent
I want
calendar?
to pull E.
E, Ruth, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to pull L and M.
L and M. Just a sec. Let's see,
Enos and Nancy.
L and M.
Enos and Nancy.
Anybody else?
I'd make a motion to move the rest of the items on the consent calendar.
We have a second? I'll second. Without exception, the rest of the consent calendar is approved. So item E, Ruth.
The comment that I wanted to make about records and our off-site storage, there was a long discussion about converting records to some kind of digital format, scanning them or whatever, than just destroying others. And I wanted to say that the schedule of which things are kept permanently and what the life of some of the records, the table was extensive, and I appreciate the going into that level of detail for us in the staff report. If we can reduce our costs for the off-site storage through scanning, I would. That can be a laborious and very time-consuming staff process, and I don't think it's a good use of staff to be doing that with their time. So I'd like to suggest that you explore using an assets worker to do that. And I know from direct experience one such person actually did that. So I know that that's appropriate for them. So I don't know if the city clerk wants to comment on this.
Yes, I would say that, for example, the city clerk, we've already started scanning some of our records, and we are actually using a former high school student that started the city as a Youth Works federal employee, federal
Great.
works, job works employee, who
Great.
we now have kept on. But a lot of the records that are off-site are records that were not necessarily put there in a very organized manner. So it's going to take a certain amount of staff time to go through them. But you're right that once they are in order, then you can get someone like an assets worker to do the actual scanning. But the big problem that we have is that records were put off-site not in the best retrievable shape.
Okay.
And so we need to work on that first.
I understand, and the boxes might not be labeled very well or whatever.
And they
But-
go back for decades.
Yeah, but just to say that, at least I'm one council member, would like to see that off-site storage cost going down over time.
Yes, we actually budgeted it to go down next fiscal year, but one of the prerequisites to start that project was to get this adopted, so we would be going through the records and getting rid of them according to an up-to-date record schedule. And so now that we have that, we can start that work, and we do intend to whittle that down. And actually, our goal is to not have off-site storage in a private facility, but either have it gone, and either destroy records that are obsolete, scan those few records that we do need to keep, and then maybe in some instances keep some over at the corporation yard. But it would be a far, far fewer amount of records than we do now.
Well, thank you for allowing me to make my comments. With that, I'll move E.
Second, without exception. Item L, Jennifer.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight these two items. This one is about the authorization for the city manager to fill 2 of the 3 vacant and budgeted police officer positions. And I just appreciated the staff report and talking about the needs of the police department and the implications of all of the budget decisions over the last few years. And similarly, the potential shift in the state of parolees and changes in the prison system. And I just appreciate all of this information. I think it's important for the public to be aware of what's going on in that department. So I'll move item L.
Second, without exception. Moving on to item M.
Actually, yes, item M. I serve on the ECDC Advisory Committee and felt that this was an opportunity to express conversation that we had at the committee level. Since adopting the budget last year, ECDC has struggled to, mostly due to licensing at this point, but also enrollment, to be fully enrolled at what the council had expected for this fiscal year, and so the budget is a continuous struggle. However, with that in place, I think it's really important, and the committee sees it as very important to maintain and even improve the quality of the care that children are receiving through the city service. And so the committee just felt very strongly that instead of filling these staff positions with temporary and part-time staff, that hiring permanent employees is pretty critical because of the consistency required for that kind of care and strong connections with the children. So I know that there are lots of moves. It's almost like a puzzle, it seems like, with all of the different potential staff changes, with the center manager and program coordinator leaving. But it's really important, I think, for the center to have permanent staff put in those placements instead of part-time temporary. And I will move item M.
Without exception, motion
Wait, it
passed.
needs a second.
Second.
Oh,
Jen
sorry.
seconded it. Okay, moving along to no public hearings, no policy items, administrative items. A, we've taken care of. B, we've taken care of. Item C, proposed extension of video provider franchise agreement with Comcast. Karen Hempill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Davis and council members. The city currently has a franchise agreement for video services with Comcast, and that non-exclusive franchise agreement is due to terminate in December of this year. Under our current franchise agreement, which, as I said, is non-exclusive, it doesn't prohibit other video providers setting up business in Emeryville. If that is not extended, as I said, it will end. There's a 5-year option to extend, and staff is recommending that the city notify Comcast that we are interested in extending that franchise agreement till 2016. It is a mutual clause, and Comcast may not decide that they want to extend. The reason for that is that the state has adopted legislation that preempts local franchise authority for video providing services. And under that state law, there is a statewide franchise agreement which is consistent in every jurisdiction. Video providers no longer will have to kind of strike a deal to benefit the specific needs or unique needs of locales. They will just have one statewide agreement. And we believe that it is in the city's best interest to retain having a local franchise authority as long as possible. Under the state law, you can extend local franchise agreements, but you cannot enter new ones. And so if the council directs staff to notify Comcast that you would like to extend that agreement and Comcast agrees, it will be the final extension. And after 2016, then Comcast would be providing services under the statewide agreement. The benefits of the city is that under our current agreement, we have been able to negotiate quite a few in-kind contributions that would not be under the statewide agreement. So, for example, providing broadcast ability to 5 locations, 2 of which we've done so already, Fire Station 2 and this chamber. But we also, in this agreement, have the option of Comcast putting in broadcast capability for the Emory Unified School District, as well as the Art Center when that's up and running, and one other location. We also receive free digital cable services in all of our city facilities that we operate, such as the fire stations and this building and the ECDC as well. We also receive through Comcast a public education government fee, which is approximately about $12,000 to $13,000 a year that we have we've saved up for the purposes of redoing the council chamber broadcast capability. Under law, it's the only thing that it can be used for, but it has been very useful to use that. Under the statewide franchise agreement, there is a franchise fee, which is the same as what we do now, but while you can have a public education and government fee, it would have to be adopted by ordinance. And there is some uncertainty on whether or not that ordinance would be subject to voter approval or not. There's legal opinion saying that it would not be, but it's not been tested in a court of law yet. So that is a bit of uncertainty. So staff strongly believes that because of the in-kind services that we get in addition to getting PEG fees, it's better to kind of go with the bird in the hand than risk not having those fees, and also being subject to a statewide franchise agreement before our time. That statewide franchise agreement was not included under Prop 22 as being exempt from state takeaway, and there is the great possibility that the state could decide to keep those funds as opposed to remitting them to the city. So that is the other reason that we are suggesting that we take advantage of the extension and ask Comcast to extend.
Any comments for Karen?
I have a comment.
Sure.
Is it possible, well, first of all, I think it's behooves us to move in this direction. They have had some problems, and yesterday was one of them, when they just,
Basketball finals was a nightmare.
you know, so I don't know what kind of technical or, issues they're having, but there've been at least 2 kind of major disruptions of service, and here, Comcast people are paying, subscribers are paying for a service that they're not getting. So my first question is, what recourse do we have when they don't deliver on their service, like what happened yesterday?
Ultimately, I mean, there are customer service standards, but they are under state and federal purview. And quite frankly, the standards are such that you have to complain to the FPP, to the FPPC. Yeah, city clerk. I mean, it's a federal complaint that you would have to make that would have to be upheld. And it's very difficult to meet a threshold that, in fact, that the federal government's going to come in and fine a company like Comcast. So, I mean, the news is...
I'm just looking for some consumer relief, like a prorated bill or something.
I mean,
That's probably up to the
quite
individual
honestly, that's
consumer,
that's what you do, is you call and you complain and you ask for a credit on your service bill. I've certainly done that myself. It ends up being not a lot of money, but at least you can get a reduced rate. The issue really is the lack of competition in the video service market. We have a non-exclusive franchise agreement. To the extent that more providers enter the market, then I think that is our best way of increasing service.
The last comment I want to make is you list Fire Station 2 as one of these places for broadcast capability. I would like to see that change to the EOC.
That is something that is pre-existing from, it used to be that we didn't have direct broadcast feed from this chamber. It actually triangulated from Fire Station 2. So it's a fiber that's already in place, but we do have the ability under our current agreement to have it put at if we do the new EOC at the Corporation Yard, we do have the ability to ask them to do that there.
Further comments? Yeah,
I just think there's a higher public interest that would be served by having that capability at our EOC.
We can ask them to do that, I mean, when it's ready, but
Yes.
they're not going to, I mean, but cable that's already present tends to remain. It's a matter of whether we activate it. But we do have the ability to ask them for 3 additional locations at no charge to us. And in the agreement, I believe it's spelled out that the EOC would be one of those, if we changed it, the EOC would be one of those locations.
Okay.
Kurt.
My comment is I'm lucky enough to have a Comcast box or a multiplexer or something in front of my house. I am so proud of that big box. It's up there on the pole. And can you guys go around and look at these boxes and look at some of the workmanship? So, I mean, I don't mind having it there with all the wires hanging out and going every direction, but it'd be sure nice sometimes I come home, it looks like somebody's in the box. They leave the box open with all the wires hanging out, which are wonderful to see, but we can't have any more items put on our poles in town. I mean, our poles are completely plugged, so I mean, we don't have to have an agreement with these guys because no other system could come to town and put anything on our poles in town. So, I mean, you have all the what little bit of real estate's left right now. So, I mean, please just drive around town and look at your boxes and see if you can maybe, clean them up a little bit.
And from the point of view of consumer, the fact that the national trend seems to be toward consolidation of communication networks and not diversification, I think, is a nationwide problem.
I think we're all agreed here, we want to direct Karen to notify Comcast, we want the extension.
And
Any
we will see
objection
what
to
their
that?
answer is.
You have your direction.
Thank you.
Moving along. Communications and reports, department heads, planning director, Charlie?
Yes, the Planning Commission met on May 26th, and the items on the agenda are listed here. They had a study session on a portion of the Greenway between Powell and Stanford. They considered a new location for Bullseye Glass on Hollis Street, which they approved unanimously, 7-0. They also approved the upgrade of the Pack and Save store. That also was approved unanimously, 7-0. Those two items are both appealable to the City Council. They considered two ordinances, one amending the interim zoning regulations regarding personal services and light wholesaling and distribution. That was also approved unanimously, and municipal code amendments related to demolition of residential structures and significant structures also approved unanimously. These last two items will be before you for first reading at your next meeting on June 21st.
Thank you, Charlie.
And I have one other announcement. We've all been waiting impatiently for this modular home on Beaudry Street,
Oh, yes.
5507 Beaudry Street, to be delivered and assembled.
No one more than me. I see it outside my bedroom window.
Oh, well,
Foundation work they've been doing.
then you won't have to go anywhere. The date has been set. It will be assembled on Saturday, July 9th. So we expect it to be quite the community event. I plan to be there.
Barn raising.
At what time? So it's
It
gonna
will
be
be
an
all
all-day
day.
event?
All day. I don't know when it starts. You have any idea when it
Okay.
starts?
I'll make some lemonade. Come on over, everybody.
Okay.
And it may go into Sunday. The noise waiver that you approve for this does include Saturday and Sunday, but they hope to wrap it up on Saturday.
Okay, any other department heads? Karen?
Yes, please. I'd like to pass, the city clerk's office, we have been working on several flyers initiatives to increase public participation and knowledge about our city government. If you remember, we did the pamphlet on the introduction to the council agenda. So we have now done another flyer, which I'm passing out the draft, which is for the community to join or participate in the city's advisory boards, committees, and commissions. And it has all of the city's, what I'm calling the community advisory bodies. Those are the advisory committees that the public serves upon, as well as the city council subcommittees and regional. And so if you would like just to review these, and if you have any suggestions or comments, I would trying to finalize this pretty soon. And thought that council would have a look at them, and so if there was anything that you'd like to say, or any comments you'd like to give me before I complete it, to please do so.
Any other staff comments? Okay, moving on to council members. First item is a discussion of a request to BART to rename the MacArthur Station. The reason I put this on the agenda is because we received information that the largest number of people that board at MacArthur BART come from Emeryville. So I would like to suggest that we, as a city, approach BART and request them to rename MacArthur/Emeryville. Anybody object to that?
No?
Very good.
Did you say MacArthur, or it says North Oakland/Emeryville on this map?
Well, we could say,
That might be a bigger deal, huh?
yeah, people may be fond of the MacArthur name, but the
Yeah, I
thing
wouldn't
is,
say
we want to
MacArthur.
get Emeryville on there.
There's a policy in your general plan that advocates for this. The policy says North Oakland/Emeryville. I think, what the Oakland part of it says is kind of probably up to Oakland. We just want Emeryville on there.
Okay.
Can you repeat your statistic? You said more people going on BART at MacArthur BART come from Emeryville than anywhere else?
The most people who board at MacArthur BART are from Emeryville.
How
Unbelievable.
on
I
earth
don't
do they
believe
know that?
Yeah.
How on earth do they
It's
know
the
that?
Immigrant Shuttle.
Not
How,
mine.
how do they know that?
It's
I
the
don't know.
Immigrant Shuttle. Once the Immigrant Shuttle began going to and from the MacArthur BART, passenger boardings went through the roof to the point that BART actually looked at it, and they determined that the huge increase in passengers and what's carried on today is something like 2/3 of all the people who go on and off MacArthur BART got there through the Immigrant Shuttle.
Really?
All right, okay.
Wow.
Well, what happens if the go-round decides to go to West Oakland instead?
West Oakland Emery.
It would,
Then it'll be called, then we want to rename that West Oakland Emery?
Why not?
Sure, why not? Why not?
That's the easiest one.
Let
I
me
don't know.
give
Bart
it
might
a
get
shot,
suspicious if we
guys.
go after all the stations.
All right, okay, we're going to give that a shot. Vice Mayor West, recommendation for updating the city's signage ordinance.
Yes, I put this on the agenda at the request of some business folks and residents in town, specifically small business owners. And I wanted to see what the council would support, and I see that Joan Strasser is here tonight to talk about this. This was something that she had authored. So if we can allow her to speak.
Mayor Davis and Vice Mayor Jennifer West and all council members, I want to thank you all for having spoken with me before I began this ordinance, when it wasn't a violation of the Brown Act, to talk to you guys. And thank you for all your consideration with regard to this thing that I've been working on. I also wanted to say that Mark and Holly Brett from the Farmers Market were here. Mark got out of the hospital just a few days ago from very serious illness, and so they couldn't stay, but I got them to leave me a very attractive, I think, sign that they have, which would kind of be a model of the kind of sign that we could have. This is the one they use in Fremont, and Mark said that would have Emeryville on the sign. Also, Adriana Oltreras from Tacos Jerezanos also attended tonight, and she also couldn't stay. She wanted to speak in favor of the sign ordinance, so I wanted to speak on behalf of both of them as well. I assume that you folks have read this and understand that I've addressed the concerns that I heard from council, from other people on the committee, and from businesses with regard to the signage issue. I want to mention that with regard to the farmers market, that I had written down here that it was a public benefit corporation, and Mark said that it had been considered as a mutual benefit, and I had read both of those myself on the internet and couldn't tell which was which. So I guess that is presumably a mutual benefit corporation, unless Mike Biddle comes up with some other thing from researching it. Okay, I looked very carefully into concerns for the disabled. There are no specific guidelines on the ADA about portable signs, so I just put general things on here, or we put general things on here that we thought would be relevant, general sensible things with regard to the placements for traffic and pedestrian safety, and for the aesthetics, including that there could be some things that we consider appropriate, and if the council doesn't consider this for some reason appropriate, things that the council can agree on as generally appropriate as a guideline for signs, and that the signs would only be on during the business hours. The farmers market could have a little more leeway, being a nonprofit, and of course they only have to be in commercial zones, and this is just for 1 year as a trial idea, so that it will not be something that'll be hard to get rid of later. So given that it will sunset at the end of a year and can be reapproved at that point, if it doesn't work out, we figured that way that businesses will self-police and it won't have many administrative costs. So that's the basic concept that we had with regard to the signs, and we really hope that you folks will, like the ideas and approve the ordinance. And thank you very much.
Any questions for Joan? Any comments? Jennifer?
Yeah, I'd just like to make the comment that I know when we discussed this, I don't know, several months ago, I know City Attorney Mike Biddle had a picture of, an extreme, I believe it was Berkeley, and the idea that this could invite blight. But I think that what I liked about the language that Joan and others put together was that it's something in between. I mean, right now it is easy to enforce no signs, although, frankly,
It's
there
not
are
being
signs.
enforced.
It's not that easy to
They
enforce.
aren't being enforced, right?
And what about giving a little more visibility to places of business? I would like to direct staff to look at how this could be turned into legalese and move forward on trying this out for 1 year.
I would like to make one comment with regard to that, and that is that having walked up and down San Pablo myself, I saw a number of businesses that did not feel they needed to be involved in this committee because they'd had signs up for years and nobody had ever bothered them. Another business said they'd had a sign up for a year or two and that suddenly they were bothered and had to take it away, but that had subsequently put it back. And I believe Holly and Mark saw something like 19 signs or something around the city. So clearly this is being a very inconsistently enforced ordinance at this time.
I too would like to look at this. I really like the idea of the 1 year sunset. And what's really funny, I mean, we want to keep the signs out of town, right? But once on the border of Emeryville, there's every corner is a sign for the farmer's market. So he walks 5 feet into Oakland, puts up the sign, and it's as if, come on, it's like you're a little bit pregnant here. So I think we need to look at doing something here, and I'd like the idea of it, so I'd like to have Mr. Biddle look at it. And
Great. I have a comment with regard to those signs too, and that is that the signs, I guess, have something about if these signs are removed, that they will not, that there's some kind of a fine.
Imprisonment and a $1,000 fine, which I find
Objectionable, and Holly and Mark have definitely agreed to take that off the signs. They will not be on the signs in Emeryville. That's already been agreed upon.
they're ugly signs.
Could they take them off of Oakland too?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they'll need to be all over Oakland once they're in Emeryville, because I think the thing that was most important to them was that they be able to get greater range of Emeryville in order to get people to come. And I know Mark was saying he was really excited about farmers market they have near the Embarcadero now on Mondays, and they got 4,000 people a day coming to that. So I think he would have liked if he had been here to tell you something about how successful they can be.
The thing about these signs is if somebody has to pay to have these signs made, they will pick them up. Right now, some of the signs that are being made, there's no value to even picking them up. So that's my concern. I'd like to see professional signs that somebody values and they will go back and pick them up so no one steals them.
Okay, so you're going to make a motion that we direct staff to come back with something that incorporates all these changes? Is that what you want to do? Okay, I would second that.
I think the general consensus of the council is to move ahead with that. Item 3, progress report on the police department's volunteer and policing program. Councilmember Atkin.
I asked to have this on the agenda because it was a year ago when, during our budget discussions, that we talked about use of volunteers. So I appreciate the police department writing a progress report on this, and it sounds like some people might be ready to go starting July 1st. So is there anything you want to highlight in your report, Ken?
Well, since we submitted the report, we've received 2 additional personal history questionnaires back, and we've had one of our 12 remove themselves because they didn't want to answer all the questions or be fingerprinted. So we have 5 on to background investigations, and then we'll go from there.
Any other comments?
I had one comment on another subject.
Oh, no, this is just on the, so, can we expect to have this up and running by July? In some limited fashion?
Well, as stated in the report,
You need some funding?
there needs some funding, and in actuality, I have not heard 3 council members say this is a program that they wanted to move forward with in that. That's
I raised my hand, Chief.
I do too.
okay.
Yep.
You got it.
So,
I
so
want to
that-
take it out of the city manager's budget,
I'll second that.
so
or the
y-
council budget.
I'll second that.
Take it out of the council budget.
Right.
So in answer to your question, yes, we're moving forward. It depends on the backgrounds and how quickly we can get them through. It depends on how quickly we can get the uniforms set up, which should not be a problem. They're polo shirts and such. So, we are hopeful that it'll be by July 1.
I just want to comment, when I've been to some of the League of California Cities conferences, I saw the town of Lincoln had some of their volunteer dressed in their attire, and their police volunteer program seemed very exciting, and they were charged up about it because they were there as volunteers talking about what they did. It was classroom oriented, but and I think it might have gone beyond talking to the school children in Lincoln. So I just thank you for moving on that.
Ken, you had another comment?
I think Piedmont has volunteered also, if I understand. At least a couple of years ago when I was there, they had some volunteer people helping the police department.
It's not uncommon for agencies to have volunteer programs. It's just where the recruitment for the volunteers come from, and actually finding meaningful work for the volunteers to do. And that's the biggest problem that most agencies face. We've modeled our program after the International Chiefs Model Program for Volunteers in Policing.
Any other comments from council?
Yeah, just what would be great,
Two items, then one-
once you put out this expenditure to get it in place, and you mentioned several events that would be very appropriate, I think, to use this, is try and keep track of how much money we save by using these volunteers. That would be a great source of information and data.
Certainly.
Ken?
Okay, an announcement. This Sunday at 11 o'clock at Watergate, Toastmasters is having an open house, and everybody's invited to a Toastmasters meeting. There'll be a couple of really good speakers there for anybody that's interested. And then the other thing I want to say is I went to Rotten City Pizza last Sunday, and I was really alarmed to discover that on the side of the building they have this huge gas line, and all the vehicles park right up and back right up to the pipe. I think that's a serious hazard that needs to be taken a look at. So if you go to the side of the building where Rotten City Pizza is, you'll see a big gas line, and you'll see trucks with the bumper parked right against the pipe. So you need to take a look at that.
Any other comments from the council? This meeting is adjourned.